Hey, what's going on, folks? This is Colion Noir joining you for another episode of CN Live. Our first guest today is the founder of the group Truckers Lives Matter. His name is James Lamb. How's it going, James?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, doing better, kind of getting over sinus infection. It's getting there slowly but surely. So other than that, I'm making it. So Trucker Lives Matter. Off the top, I guess I understand it. But I'm going to go ahead and let you explain it a little bit further for people who don't quite get the moniker.
Sure. Well, basically, Trucker Lives Matter is obviously a copycat movement of Black Lives Matter, as you can imagine. However, we're really talking about a lot of different things. And this is a race-neutral kind of a movement. This is about the occupation of truck drivers. But it really goes beyond that. And it's really more about that. And in fact, there's a number of myths that are currently kind of floating around in the industry among our members and among some of the NRA members. And really, Trucker Lives Matter is designed to highlight the plight of truck drivers in terms of the lack of the ability to carry. But it really is a movement at this point that is intended to help all Americans get the right to carry from state to state. So whereas we had a bill that we were trying to kind of get passed a while back in 2014, Mike's Law, and we had approached NRA about that, a while back, that is off the table, and we've kind of moved on to Plan B. And Plan B is called the Michael's Law Amendment, and that's really what this movement is about. It's to get that Michael's Law Amendment that would bestow essentially, or not really bestow because the Second Amendment bestows the right, but it would essentially endorse and affirm every American's right to carry from one state to another.
So does Michael's Law, does this parallel national reciprocity essentially, or?
I consider it the back door in. And in fact, what we're hoping that the NRA will do is kind of look at it from the perspective of all roads lead to Rome, or to the Second Amendment in this case. So while the NRA goes and does its thing about national reciprocity, ours is a little bit different. And basically, Michael's Law Amendment, named after a trucker, Mike Bagelin, who unfortunately was murdered, one of 500 people that were murdered in the last 10 years, the last decade that were involved in the transportation industry. Basically, Michael's Law Amendment there's two parts to it, and there's four things that we're looking to accomplish. And what we're doing is, instead of creating a new law and instead of reinventing the wheel, we're looking at the existing statute, the Peaceful Journey statute, essentially in Title 18 of the United States Code, and we're tweaking it. And basically what we're looking to do is make it from a transportation, interstate transportation of firearms statute into a right to carry statute applying to all Americans, not just truckers, but everyone. And basically what we do is we make the distinction between possessing a firearm, as in, the firearm is basically locked up and it's unloaded and it's, not within reach. Under the current statute, this tweaking of the statute would mean you could actually carry, so not just possess, but actually carry in a readily accessible loaded capacity for self-defense purposes. So we do that, and then we basically say that it's almost an endorsement really of constitutional carry, where the law specifically would say that you have the right to carry from one state as an American citizen, to any other state. And then the second, or I should say the third point that's worth bringing up is basically it preempts the states from regulating firearms when it comes to entering into their state, leaving their state, or ultimately passing through their state. And the fourth component, and what we think is the strongest and will fight back any attempts, that we're worried about on the national reciprocity side, 10th Amendment challenges, it actually respects a state's right to regulate firearms of its own residents when the residents are, living and working and traveling point to point within that particular state. So we think it's an excellent proposal. It applies to all Americans, and hopefully the NRA, is getting our petition signatures, 6,000 of them now, and hopefully, NRA is ready to partner with us.
Okay. So I guess my question to you is, and I just want to provide some clarification for people out there, what is the biggest roadblock? What is the biggest prohibitor of truckers carrying their firearms in their truck from a legality standpoint? Is it just merely the patchwork of laws that they have to deal with respect to crossing state lines, or is there? Because like you said before, there was a common myth that the transportation authority isn't necessarily the authority that's preventing truckers from owning guns in their trucks. Is there something else that's a bit more of a figurehead that's causing an issue?
Yeah, there's two myths that I'm here to dispel tonight. And the first one, of course, is that our movement is just to get truckers the right, to carry. It's a special carve out. We're way beyond that. That's 2014. Welcome to 2017.
Yeah.
So at this point, that's one, and I think we've done that. And the second myth is that there's some kind of federal regulation that prohibits the carrying of firearms in a commercial motor vehicle that would apply to truckers. And that's just not true. There is no such regulation unless someone is trying to take the peaceful journey statute, and try to twist it around to make it into that. I mean, that's not what that does. That statute currently says, that you have the right to transport it unloaded, but it doesn't say you don't have the right to have it in a commercial motor vehicle. Gotcha. So that there is no such regulation. And so with that said, the only thing that really is a barrier to truckers actually carrying right now is the patchwork that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the fact that that we're looking at basically, there's no federal regulation, but ultimately, we're basically dealing with the company's policies in terms of drivers, working for companies that may not want them to carry. And we're going to deal with that after we get beyond this, because that's phase two.
Yeah.
Phase one is let's get the law passed, hopefully with the support and endorsement of the NRA. And then phase two will be, the motor carriers actually changing their policies. If you go to truckerlivesmatter.com, the FAQ page goes into great detail about that second phase and that dilemma. The third phase is the shippers, that are hiring the motor carriers. So we're going to have to get there too.
Gotcha. My mind is going a million miles an hour because I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the castle doctrine in many ways.
Yeah.
I know here in Texas, your vehicle is considered an extension of your house or your home. Yeah. Has there ever been an approach from that angle to now granted, that would be limited considering it only applies to you being in your vehicle and having the gun in your vehicle, not necessarily you carrying it when you step outside of your vehicle.
Right.
Are you aware of any attempts to kind of approach the issue from that angle? Like, for instance, if I'm a truck driver and I'm in my truck, granted, I guess it is considered commercial, but nonetheless still an extension of my domicile, of my property, so to speak.
Yeah.
I would imagine that we technically have a castle doctrine. There'd be an extension of that castle doctrine to say the truck drivers who are in their truck. Do you know of any attempts to approach it from that angle at all, or has it been tried and been shot down, or is there a vital link that I'm missing?
Well, we are talking about it in terms of castle doctrine. In fact, we cover that in the FAQs as well. But basically, there is an issue that may wind up not necessarily being a matter of political solution. It may be a legal solution. So we may actually have to wind up suing one of these states, like New York or California, that we would call the unfriendly gun states, I guess you would say. And those states, what they're doing basically is they're allowing their own residents to possess a firearm in their homes for self-protection. And truckers are living and working in the cab of their truck, and they're traveling all around the country. So if that trucker, let's say, is in the state of New York, and he's being denied the right to have a firearm in that vehicle, not by federal regulation, not by United States code, but by that state's law, then that state's law is challengeable under the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. So we are thinking about that. We are trying to make that argument right now at the political level, dealing with some of the folks, some of the congressional staffers saying that's why we need to tweak the current statute. But if that doesn't work, then we're probably going to wind up commencing a suit against one of these states and challenging, their unlawful acts in the context of both the Second Amendment and equal protection.
Gotcha. Now, really quickly, we got about 2 minutes. Kind of talk about a little bit for people the general kind of concerns that a lot of truck drivers have, some of the safety issues, some of the things that they may find themselves in that most people don't really think about when it comes to being a truck driver.
Well, I mean, it's really a matter of, you're living and working on the road, and you're in, solitude. So, typically, other than sometimes when there's team drivers going on, the typical truck driver over the road is all by himself or herself. And, they're in some dangerous areas. One of the issues that our organization, Trucker Lives Matter, is a DBA of our SBTC, Small Business and Transportation Coalition trade group. And so one of the issues that we've been working with Federal Highway Administration, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, divisions of Department of Transportation, is about using the Jason's Law money that, has been allocated by Congress. Another unfortunate case, Jason Revenberg, having been killed as well under the same circumstances as Mike Bagelin, the namesake of our bill. Well, basically, it's a situation where these people can't find enough safe truck parking that's out there. We're hoping that monies will, come down the pike and ultimately, will improve that condition. But right now, I mean, we're dealing with a stat right now that's alarming. It's horrible. It's 50 workers in interstate transportation every year being murdered, not killed by accident, car accident, related, motor vehicle accident related incident. It's all willful homicide. That's 500 people like Mike Bagelin and Jason Revenberg, in the last decade alone.
Yeah, that's incredibly unfortunate. I don't like anybody being hurt, but I can attest to the solitude that comes from being on the road, and especially crossing state lines, not necessarily being familiar with the areas that you're going to. So I wish you massive amounts of luck with all the work you guys are doing, and I really appreciate it. Let me know how I can help, and thank you very much for putting the word out there, James.
All right, and thank you, and tell Wayne to call me.
Okay, will do. I'm going to text him now.
All right. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, James.
See you.
So coming up next, we'll visit with Colt Firearms to see what they're putting out in 2017. We'll be back.
All right, thank you.